College Park. You know, in those days, visibility was pretty much non-existent, so the only thing I knew about gay people was, you know, negative images. And so I knew I was gay, long before I actually acted on it. But so in 1966, when I was 21, there was a gay bar that was sort of notorious among, the straight community called the Pepper Hill. And I knew about it, so I went down there one night. Didn't realize that gay people don't come out till late, so I went there at 8. It was completely empty. I watched people, I didn't have the nerve to go in, and one man pulled up. Of course, he was very stereotypically older man in a Cadillac, and so he walks in, and that's the only person I see go in. So I do the same thing a week later, and the same guy was the only person that showed up. So it turned out, I think he worked there, and it hadn't, there was just nobody there. So that kept me back in the closet for another year. But anyway, in 67, in the spring, I went to the Pepper Hill on a Friday night. I'd been drinking, so I was a little bit loose, and it was late, and it was packed with people. A lot of young people. Turned out the guy I went to college with was there. He called me by my nickname, which, first made me uptight, and then I realized he was a friend. And so that's how it all started for me. And in many ways, that was the most important day of my life, because instantly I knew that's what I was going to do. There was going to be no closet for me ever again. Now, being out was different back then, because it wasn't like announcing to the world. It was just being true to yourself. And so, I knew that. I also knew that, pretty much almost right away that, if my friends couldn't deal with it, that would be their problem. And so that was like the day of liberation. I also, had a second closet, and that was the closet that I basically was attracted to people that were younger than me. And when the Stonewall riots occurred, are you still taping? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. When the Stonewall riots occurred, I felt like people like me wouldn't be accepted within the sort of movement, so I didn't really act on it at all. In the early 70s, Baltimore had a really vibrant lesbian community, and there was a lesbian community center, there was the Women Journal of Liberation, there was also a lesbian publication called Desperate Living, all those things, but the gay male community was not very organized. There was, in 69, 70, there was a gay liberation front. The people lived on Park Avenue, 2100 block of Park Avenue, and the guys that sort of organized that and were part of that collective, they all decided to move to San Francisco. So that was sort of the end of that movement, and so they moved there. So there wasn't much happening. Then in like 72, maybe 73, this man decided he was going to organize a gay activist alliance here. But he had a very checkered past. He had been sent to prison for racist ideology and racist activity. So, he wasn't somebody that could really galvanize the community. And he ultimately actually got murdered, but it wasn't related to that activity. So nothing happened. And then I was going to Leon's one night in 1975, and there was a flyer on my car. And it said that this group was organizing called the Baltimore Gay Alliance. And so a meeting was going to happen on a Thursday, and it was happening at the apartment of the guy who was then pastor of the Metropolitan Community Church. So I went to that with a group of friends, Eddie Hall, Rex Snyder, Charles, Norman Thomas, a group of people who became very involved in the community in the early years. And it was sort of the beginning for all of us of becoming involved in an organization. The Baltimore Gay Alliance was the first permanent, I'd say, gay group in the city that actually stuck and accomplished some things. And it was a multi-ethnic and multi-gender group in the sense that women and men had leadership positions. The first president was an African-American woman, Paulette Young. And that's when Harvey Schwartz got involved, and I consider Harvey the most important person in the gay community of Baltimore in the mid to late 70s and early 80s. He's the reason we're meeting here right now, because he's the one who organized to buy the building. So anyway, so my initial involvement was related to a desire to get involved politically. And there was a subcommittee of Baltimore Gay Alliance. It was the legal committee that was supposed to work on legislation and things like that. But I later, I pretty quickly realized that I was more interested in doing social activities, meaning, meeting the needs of the community ourselves. And so the Gay Switchboard got started by the Baltimore Gay Alliance, and it was initially in my house. A little later, we decided that we wanted to have a gay health clinic. And what really led to the community center being organized was the desire to get the federal funds that were available to start the gay clinic. And so, I was a lawyer then. I just passed the bar in '76, so I wrote the articles of incorporation and filed them, and then Harvey and I worked, and some other people worked on getting the 501c3 status that enabled us to get the nonprofit tax exempt status. And we got that grant. It was only $10,000, but back then that was, big money. And started the clinic. And at the same time that the center was getting started, PRO was organizing, and we saw PRO as sort of the conservative gays, and we sort of saw them as maybe a potential threat to our organizing. I went to one of their meetings, and Steve introduced this doctor who was interested in doing a clinic. And, we had the money, we just didn't have a doctor, so I went up to him, his name was Roger Enlow, and asked, told him that we were trying to start this clinic, and he said, great, and so he became the first medical director of the clinic. And the clinic opened in 1978. We still didn't have a building here, and it met at the Metropolitan Community Church on St. Paul Street. Met, I think it was Tuesday and Thursdays at night. It was primarily an STD clinic, but it was really, I think, an important thing. Then a little later, the center rented its first space on Maryland Avenue, 22nd in Maryland, in the basement. And the clinic moved next door to the other part of that basement. And so that was the first time we had both a community center, a physical space, and the clinic had its own space. And then when this building was purchased, eventually the clinic moved down here. The clinic was on the third floor. And over my objection, the clinic adopted the name Chase Brexton, because I thought it was a closet name, and I was afraid that it would result in the clinic losing its gay identity. But it did happen, and then eventually, Chase Brexton split off and became, again, I thought that, but it split off and became, what now is the Chase Brexton Health Services. I feel like, at least I'm speaking really for myself, but I think it's true of a number of early activists that, we were pretty radical, and, we weren't really interested in acceptance. We were interested in protecting ourselves and certainly guarding against and trying to obtain protections for our job, maybe fighting for the repeal of the sodomy laws, those types of things. But, I see the movement now as much more conservative. I really have a little bit of difficulty relating to it because, marriage equality is, to me, the ultimate in a conservative issue, Not that my partner and I may not eventually get married, but not because we believe in marriage, but because, we may do it for the benefits. But, I sort of see that as sort of kind of being co-opted by the mainstream community. So I think early activists were less likely to be that way. We were more sexual liberationist. And I feel like the community sort of lost something by being too assimilated. Because I kind of feel like, our role is to be outsiders, that we provide a counterpoint to the main ideology and the mainstream thinking of society.